Indigo snake is a large natural predator for a lot of animals in the areas where they live. They eat anything that moves in front of them, pretty much.
I told her that I wanted to find something bigger, specifically eastern indigo snakes.
In the vast wilderness of the Florida Everglades, a hidden war is unfolding, one that not even the scientists watching trail cameras were prepared to witness. Imagine trails revealing creatures thought extinct in the wild for decades, suddenly appearing in ways that challenge everything we believed about this fragile ecosystem. But this isn't just a story of revival. This footage hints at something far more complex, an ecological chess match involving invasive predators, native species fighting back fiercely, and a microscopic enemy spreading silently beneath the surface. The unexpected discovery. For more than 4 decades, the eastern indigo snake was effectively absent from large parts of North Florida. Scientists and conservationists had come to accept that wild populations of this majestic reptile were functionally gone. Then, trail camera footage changed everything. 2 small snakes appeared on the forest floor. Hatchlings that had never been handled by humans, never tracked or supplemented, born entirely in the wild. This moment sparked stunned silence among the experts watching the footage. It was an image that wasn't supposed to exist for at least another 40 years. These 2 babies weren't just any snakes. They represented something far greater than ordinary wildlife sightings. Their presence signaled successful reproduction, a milestone conservationists had long dreamed of, but rarely dared expect this soon. The preserve where they were found, a 6,000-acre area called Apalachicola Bluffs and Ravines, had been carefully restored over years. Longleaf pines replanted, gopher tortoises reintroduced to rebuild underground burrows, and captive-bred indigo snakes released yearly. Every season, cameras had swept the forest floor, returning blank. Then these hatchlings appeared without warning. Watching the footage, the room fell quiet as the scientists processed what they were seeing. One researcher even stepped out, overwhelmed not by the image itself, but by its implications. This was more than a hopeful sign. It was proof the eastern indigo snake population was recovering naturally in a place long thought lost to them. The footage became a pivotal moment, not just in a local conservation project, but in the future battle ahead within Florida's ecosystems. The eastern indigo snake is not just any snake. It holds a unique place in this region's ecology. Its return suggests a shift in the balance of power among Florida's wildlife, but exactly what that means remains to be fully understood. The footage opened a new chapter, but it also raised urgent questions. What challenges lie ahead for this species and the fragile lands they inhabit? And what unseen forces are converging in these forests, waiting in the wings? Scientists knew these hatchlings were the result of carefully nurtured efforts, but the wild nature of their birth also meant they were about to face threats no human hands could protect them from. The indigo snakes had returned, but they were walking into a transformed world, one shaped by decades of ecological upheaval. To grasp the true weight of this discovery, it's crucial to understand the broader context unfolding beneath the forests and swamps of Florida. Even with these young snakes showing up, it felt like some kind of beacon of hope. But really, it was only the top layer of a much more complex story. Under the mottled shadow of pines and oaks, the whole ecosystem was on this fragile teetering edge, like everything could slip at any moment. Native species were dealing with pressures that nobody would have seen in earlier generations. And out past there, the Everglades, far to the south, had this growing challenge that was starting to creep northward. The truth was that those hatchlings were born right into a fast-moving collision between different ecological pieces that simply don't share the same space well. The quiet after the camera playback wasn't just surprise. It was also because the implications extended way into the future of entire habitats. The balance in the woods and wetlands had been shifted, disturbed, kind of undone by a chain of invasions and changes, and this discovery basically marked the beginning of a struggle that most people didn't expect. People with experience in the field would call that kind of moment rare, like a brief view at the edge of recovery. Not fully there, but close enough to notice. Still, even with all the excitement, the optimism had to stay careful, because everyone knew obstacles were waiting ahead. The return of the indigo might give a real opportunity to help re-establish some order in ecosystems thrown off by invasive species, but it still wasn't a lock. Far from it. Nature here isn't still. It's reacting, adjusting, and in certain ways, pushing back too. What that struggle looks like and who might end up winning will depend on forces that are still mostly out of sight. The details of that story begin with the indigo snake itself and its extraordinary role in Florida's wild places. The eastern indigo snakes. The eastern indigo snake is North America's longest native snake.
Is an eastern indigo. He is much larger, much larger than your average eastern indigo.
Revered not just for its size, but for its special place in the ecosystem. It is a powerful predator that feeds on a wide range of prey, including other snakes, even venomous species like rattlesnakes and copperheads. This immunity to pit viper venom makes the indigo uniquely adapted as a top predator on the forest floor. Its reintroduction is not just about bringing back a species, but about restoring a natural check on invasive and pest populations. Conservationists see the indigo snake as a vital tool in managing one of Florida's most destructive wildlife invasions. Its diet is diverse enough to impact many species, but what truly sets it apart is its ability to hunt snakes, including the invasive Burmese python. By re-establishing indigo populations in northern Florida, biologists aim to rebuild a native predator community capable of resisting or at least mitigating the python's spread. The indigo snake's reintroduction programs are meticulous and long-term. At the Apalachicola Preserve, efforts focus on restoring natural habitats, including the burrows of gopher tortoises, which provide essential shelter. Each year, captive bred snakes are released in carefully coordinated cohorts, with ongoing monitoring through trail cameras and radio tracking. The discovery of wild-born hatchlings confirmed the success of these efforts beyond expectations. Brad O'Hanlon from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission called the project one of the gold standard conservation efforts in Florida. He stressed the significance of the indigo's role as a native apex predator, which, by preying on a wide prey base, naturally helps rebalance disrupted ecosystems. This is critical in areas where invasive species such as the Burmese python have wreaked havoc. The indigo's ability to resist venom is not just a fascinating adaptation, it represents a strategic advantage in this ecological battle. Unlike many predators that avoid venomous snakes, the indigo can hunt them with relative safety. This allows it to target competitors and threats effectively, supporting the overall health and diversity of the ecosystem. This snake is also important culturally and scientifically. It symbolizes a connection to Florida's natural past, an apex predator that once roamed widely but was nearly lost due to habitat destruction, human impact, and invasive species. Its reappearance carries the hope of reviving former ecological balance, but also serves as a reminder of fragility in wilderness management. These pressures cascade southward, where they have already reshaped an entire landscape. The Burmese python invasion. Few invasive species have had such a dramatic and destructive impact as the Burmese python in the Florida Everglades. Originally imported for the pet trade, these snakes found their way into the wild, where they thrived in an environment with few natural predators and abundant prey. Their arrival marked the start of an ecological crisis affecting thousands of species. The first Burmese python in Everglades National Park was recorded in 1979. But at that time, the threat was virtually unrecognized. During the 80s and 90s, Miami became the hub of the exotic reptile trade, with more than 100,000 baby pythons imported between 1996 and 2006 alone. These young snakes were inexpensive and small enough to be sold as pets, but few understood they could grow to lengths exceeding 20 feet. Once released or escaped into the wild, these pythons grew rapidly, reaching lengths up to 20 feet and weights as high as 200 pounds within a few years. Many overwhelmed owners, unprepared for the snake's size and care needs, abandoned them near canals and wetlands, introducing a rapidly reproducing population to a sensitive ecosystem. The catastrophic scale of this invasion is unlike anything ever seen in North America. Hurricane Andrew in 1992 played an unexpected role by destroying a reptile breeding facility near Homestead, allowing more pythons to escape into the Everglades. This event accelerated the wild population growth, making containment efforts even more difficult. Genetic studies suggest breeding populations existed even before 1985, confirming the python's entrenched presence. Efforts to restrict the import and ownership of Burmese pythons followed. Importation was banned in 2012, and Florida criminalized ownership in 2021. Yet by that time, the population had exploded, with estimates ranging from 100,000 to 300,000 snakes living in South Florida's wetlands. Their secretive nature and camouflage make detection nearly impossible, with estimates suggesting that for every python seen, hundreds remain hidden. The consequences for native wildlife have been devastating. Mammal populations in the Everglades plummeted by more than 90% in areas with python presence. Raccoons, opossums, marsh rabbits, and bobcats have all suffered extreme declines, creating a silence where life once thrived.
Wildlife officials say these pythons are wreaking havoc on the environment. Pythons contributed to the decline of small mammals, including opossums, bobcats, and foxes.
This collapse of small mammal communities disrupts the food web and threatens ecosystem health at its core. Trying to rein in the python population has turned out to be this monumental headache. Stuff that usually works, like hunting and trapping, thermal imaging drones and baiting, it all seems to fall short in practice. The main thing is that pythons are ambush predators, so they kinda wait, stay still, rather than go chasing around. Because of that, bait and traps just don't do what people expect. On top of that, their body temperature is basically matched to the surroundings, so thermal detection becomes shaky, especially in Florida's warm wetlands where the air is already doing a lot. Even with big removal programs, and yes, they have deployed hundreds of hunters, plus new technologies, python eradication is broadly seen as unlikely. The way their population bounces back kind of reminds people of Australia's cane toad crisis. There, control efforts ran for decades, and yet the invasive species still didn't get fully knocked out. The Everglades are facing something like that uphill grind, except the python army keeps expanding, one season at a time. What's worse is the invasion doesn't only change what the land looks like, it also kicks off cascading ecological ripples. With their voracious appetite, strong reproductive success, and that elusive habit, pythons have really altered the survival math for native wildlife. Species either adapt fast or they disappear, and that adjustment period isn't gentle. This is the environment where the eastern indigo snake is being reintroduced, so it feels like the beginning of an ecological standoff that no one will mistake as ordinary, not after everything. This tension, hidden but ever-present, fuels the next phase of the story. A silent, fierce conflict beneath the river of grass. The silent collapse of mammals. The arrival of Burmese pythons in the Florida Everglades triggered a dramatic and silent transformation in the landscape's animal communities. As these massive constrictors spread, native mammal populations plummeted in numbers rarely seen before. Over a span of just over a decade, raccoons, opossums, and other mammals vanished from vast stretches of the park, creating an eerie stillness where vibrant wildlife once thrived. The scale of this decline stunned scientists and raised urgent alarms about the ecosystem's stability. A landmark 2012 study made these declines impossible to ignore. Researchers drove the main park road at night, replicating surveys conducted years earlier. The difference was staggering. Raccoons had dropped by more than 99%, opossums by almost 99%, and even large mammals like deer had suffered losses exceeding 90%. Marsh rabbits and foxes disappeared altogether during the survey period, and bobcats declined drastically. Such rapid and widespread collapse deepened the crisis unfolding in the Everglades. The pattern of decline left little doubt about its cause. Wherever Burmese pythons had established themselves the longest, mammal populations saw the steepest falls. Control sites beyond python territory showed populations near historic levels, making the correlation clear. This spatial and temporal overlap made it evident that the snakes were reshaping the food web, not indirectly, but through relentless predation. Native mammals, unaccustomed to such efficient hunters, bore the brunt of the impact. Further confirmation came from controlled experiments where radio-tagged marsh rabbits were released into the wild. Inside python territory, over 3/4 of these rabbits were slain within a year. At sites free of pythons, none were lost to predation. The results underscored how decisively the pythons were dismantling local mammal communities. This was not a slow decline, but a dramatic crash that had rippling consequences for other species and ecological processes. Scientists working in the Everglades described spending hours driving through places that used to feel alive, like once thriving habitats, and then they just hit this strange silence. Not silence from absence exactly, more like silence after overwhelming loss. When mammals disappeared, the food chains sort of unraveled, and the whole system of essential ecological tasks got messed up. Seed dispersal, scavenging, all that. The ecosystem started to come apart in small ways, then bigger ones, and it showed how thin that long-held network really is, the one that lasted for millennia. That quiet collapse then forced a reckoning. It was pretty clear that invasive pythons weren't just some annoying presence. They were reshaping the Everglades from the bottom up, like foundational parts of the ecology being rearranged. The mammal drop also meant a decline in biodiversity and a thinning of ecological resilience. Trying to restore balance became a race against time, because each year with no action gave the damage more room to deepen. Still, nature doesn't always collapse all the way at once. Some native species managed, in a way, to hold on with small glimpses of survival. They clung to changing patterns, or to new refuges. But even so, the downward trend in the mammal population pointed toward a perilous future. Without intervention, the food web could shift in ways that are hard to undo, pushing the Everglades toward a different, new, and uncertain state. And this collapse wasn't only ecological, it carried cultural and economic weight too. Mammals are part of the region's natural heritage, and they also support tourism as well as hunting industries. The complexities of managing an invasive python population would prove as vast as the Everglades themselves. But the fight to preserve native species demanded every effort be made. Challenges in python control. Efforts to contain and reduce the Burmese python population in the Everglades have faced daunting obstacles from the start. The snake's biology and behavior defy many traditional wildlife management tactics. Pythons are secretive ambush predators, relying on stillness rather than pursuit, which renders common trapping methods ineffective. Their ability to thermoregulate by matching ambient temperatures also makes thermal imaging, a cutting-edge detection method, largely unreliable in warm wetlands. Innovations such as baited traps have failed because these snakes do not chase food. Instead, they wait motionless for prey to come close. Attempts to use visual or thermal drones face difficulties with tall grasses and blending camouflage. Even the limestone bedrock of the Everglades complicates efforts, preventing installation of effective drift fences that could guide snakes into traps at scale. The environment itself serves as a natural fortress for the invaders. In response, Florida launched several aggressive programs, including the annual Python Challenge, which incentivizes public participation in hunting the snakes. At its peak, thousands of participants removed hundreds of pythons annually, but these efforts only scratched the surface of the invasive population. Officials acknowledged the challenge was more about raising awareness than achieving direct population control, describing removals like draining a lake with a soup ladle. The rise of professional removal contractors marked a new phase in the battle. Hundreds of paid hunters now work year-round, employing specialized methods to locate and capture pythons. Partnerships with technology firms led to brief surges in removals, sometimes capturing hundreds of snakes in single months. Still, the sheer scale of the python population dwarfs these achievements. Perhaps the most sophisticated tool in use is the Judah snake program, where a male python is fitted with a radio transmitter and released. During mating season, this tagged snake leads scientists to female snakes, allowing targeted removals. This innovation has helped locate and remove breeding aggregations and destroy thousands of potential offspring before they hatch. Despite these advances, experts concede that eradication is unrealistic. The United States Geological Survey officially states that total elimination of Burmese pythons in southern Florida is likely impossible. The similarity with Australia's decades-long struggle to control cane toads highlights how invasive species can become entrenched despite best efforts. Florida appears locked in a battle it cannot fully win. This acceptance, however, does not translate to surrender. Control programs continue to evolve, seeking to limit the python's spread and reduce its ecological impact. Ongoing research into python behavior, detection methods, and predator interactions fuels hopes for better tools and strategies. The aim is to stabilize affected ecosystems while building resilience among native species. The quiet devastation etched by disappearing mammals has forced a search beyond removal programs, setting sights on the unseen pressures that threaten to rewrite survival in ways science is just beginning to comprehend. The hidden parasite threat. Beyond the visible battle between native and invasive snakes lies an unseen danger quietly spreading through Florida's ecosystems. This threat comes in the form of a parasitic crustacean called Rhyliatiella orientalis, often mistaken for a worm but actually a pentastomid, an organism specialized for life inside snake lungs. Originating in Southeast Asia, where Burmese pythons carry it harmlessly thanks to thousands of years of shared evolution, the parasite found a new home in Florida alongside its python hosts. In its new environment, however, the story changed dramatically. Native snakes had no evolved defenses against this parasite, which invades their respiratory systems, filling their lungs, blocking airways, and suffocating them from within. Unlike the pythons, which tolerate the infection with minimal harm, Florida's native snakes suffer higher parasite loads and more severe effects. This difference puts many native species at risk of population declines unseen until now. The parasite's life cycle is unique and complex. Adult parasites residing in infected snakes release eggs into the environment through the snake's waste. Cockroaches ingest these eggs and become intermediate carriers of the parasite larvae. Frogs and lizards then consume the infected cockroaches, passing the larvae up the food chain. Finally, when a native snake preys on an infected frog or lizard, the larvae migrate through the stomach wall and settle in the lungs, completing the cycle. This intricate pathway allows the parasite to spread independently from Burmese pythons once established. Research conducted in 2020 examined over 500 native snakes found dead across southern Florida and revealed alarming numbers. More than half of the native snake species tested were already infected, showing the parasite's rapid and widespread invasion. Even more concerning, infection intensities were much higher in native snakes than in pythons, suggesting native hosts suffer heavier parasite burdens, compounding threats to their survival. By 2025, infections were documented in 18 native snake species across 27 to 35 counties, a range far beyond the current python population. The parasite's reach stretches as far north as Gainesville and the Florida Panhandle, moving faster and more broadly than its python hosts. This northward spread is particularly worrisome because cold climates generally limit python expansion, but the parasite survives frost within its hosts, allowing it to colonize new areas unchecked. Populations of small-bodied native snakes, like pygmy rattlesnakes, have experienced severe local declines linked directly to parasite infections. Adult parasites can physically occupy the entire lung cavity in these smaller snakes, leading to suffocation. This parasitic invasion presents a novel stressor on native snake populations, potentially undermining decades of conservation gains, and as native species face both oversized predators and microscopic invaders. Another force is beginning to shift the balance in unexpected ways. Native predators fighting back. In the shadowed wetlands and forests of Florida, nature is pushing back against the python invasion in surprising and powerful ways. Native predators like bobcats and American alligators have adapted to prey on Burmese pythons, signaling an ecological resilience that few expected. These interactions mark an evolutionary and behavioral shift, rewriting predator-prey relationships in real time. One of the most striking examples comes from a trail camera capturing a bobcat attacking and slaying a 13-foot, 52-pound male python that had eluded hunters and predators for years.
Over 50 pounds and 13 feet long, but dead, with its neck ripped apart, buried under the brush.
The bobcat's precise strike and successful slay highlight a growing pattern. Native predators are learning to exploit python vulnerabilities, turning the tables on this invasive giant. This event was not an isolated incident, but part of a broader story unfolding across the Everglades. Scientific studies have confirmed bobcats eating python eggs and hatchlings, as well as adult pythons. Necropsies reveal bobcat fur and claws inside python stomachs, showing that pythons are no longer unchallenged apex predators. Similarly, American alligators have been documented consuming juvenile pythons multiple times. This turns the often feared python into prey, reshaping the food web and suggesting equilibrium might be slowly restoring. Even smaller native species can still end up doing a pretty surprising amount. Like the Florida cotton rat, usually treated as prey for a bunch of predators, has been seen to slay a python hatchling. Cottonmouth snakes also have been confirmed to slay and then consume young pythons, so it adds yet another complicated strand to how things actually play out. Taken together, these examples point to a pretty broad set of native species that are directly dealing with the python threat. Ecologists read these predator-prey shifts as a sign that the ecosystem is sort of recalibrating, not only through learned behavior, but also through natural selection. The animals that made it through the early invasion have apparently developed fresh hunting methods, making use of python actions that were, before, mostly missed or not recognized. Bobcats taking advantage of the slower movement seen in recently fed pythons, and alligators encountering hatchlings in the water both suggest these tactics can spread quickly, almost like an on-the-ground adjustment. Meanwhile, the pythons themselves are responding too. Long-running radio tracking indicates they tend to steer clear of human access corridors, and over time, they become more cautious, kind of like they are catching on. The snakes that keep surviving tend to be the ones that are better at evading detection, so natural selection is apparently working on both sides of this clash. The Everglades ends up feeling like a living, shifting battlefield, where predator and prey keep adapting, pushing evolutionary change in a kind of accelerated loop. Eastern indigo snakes, reintroduced to North Florida, add to that resistance in their own way. On-site notes describe indigos eating python hatchlings, and in some cases, radio-tracked python signals vanish once the signals reach indigo areas, which likely means predation. These sightings show native apex snakes acting more like active participants in the fight, instead of just background actors. In this evolving struggle, every attack, every slay, and every learned behavior matters. The war beneath the river of grass continues, shaped by hunters old and new. The three-front battle ahead. The story unfolding in Florida is not just about a single battle, but a three-front war shaping the future of its ecosystems. On one side, the eastern indigo snake is making a slow but steady march southward, returning to territories long lost and gradually reclaiming its role as an apex predator. Each released and wild-born indigo moves deeper into the landscape it was bred to defend, its survival vital to restoring balance in snake-invaded habitats. Meanwhile, the Burmese python continues its relentless push northward. Climate change and warming waterways slowly expand the snake's range, allowing it to colonize new areas once too cool to support it. The invasive python is an ever-present threat, moving toward the heart of Florida's native snake country, ready to disrupt these fragile ecosystems with its voracious appetite and rapid reproduction. Adding to this tension is a hidden adversary, the parasitic lungworm. This microscopic invader rides an intricate transmission chain, moving northward through cockroaches, frogs, lizards, and ultimately native snakes. Unlike pythons, the parasite withstands frost and colder climates, granting it a range far beyond the reptile hosts that introduced it. It now threatens even the legendary eastern indigo snake before these apex hunters can fully re-establish themselves. These three forces, indigos advancing from the north, pythons creeping up from the south, and parasites infiltrating ecosystems from multiple directions, are converging along an unseen line stretching across Florida's peninsula. Where they meet will determine not only the fate of the indigo, but the resilience of entire ecosystems. The outcome depends on which force crosses the other first. If the indigos reach python territories before the parasite reaches deep into their populations, there is real hope. Their unique ability to hunt and consume venomous and invasive snakes could curb the python's expansion. This would allow ecosystems to regain functionality, stabilizing a web of life disrupted by decades of invasion. However, if the parasite arrives first, it runs the risk of delivering this silent but devastating nudge inside the indigo population. Young snakes that get infected early might die off before they ever breed, and that could wipe out years of careful, slow restoration work. This invisible foe brings a kind of extra complication to conservation, like a wrinkle few people imagined when the reintroduction programs first kicked off. The way this triple front struggle plays out shows, in a very real way, how unpredictable ecological invasions and recoveries can be. Evolution and natural selection apply pressure on both invaders and locals, pushing shifting behaviors that then travel through the food chain. Predators start to learn how to hunt this new kind of prey, while the invaders quietly retool their tactics to reduce detection. It is this moving contest between survival and eventual collapse that seems to unfold in real time. What makes the whole story really stand out is the quick tempo of ecological change that appears to be happening. Native animals are adapting their hunting, breeding, and survival strategies at a speed faster than what has been properly documented in any forest ecosystem in North America. The Everglades and the habitats around it become a kind of arena where natural selection races against human efforts to rescue endangered species and protect ecosystems. The Everglades story is one of hope, resilience, and unforeseen challenges. From the return of the eastern indigo snake to the silent spread of hidden parasites, nature is fighting back in complex ways. If you're fascinated by this evolving battle and want to stay updated, be sure to like this video and subscribe for the latest chapters in Florida's wild recovery.